Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome. How's that? Warm welcome. That's a warm welcome to you. If any of you would like, there are some seats. If you want to become a bit more part of the action, you might want to come down to some of this area down here. Maybe you're wanting to escape. Listen, and also a warm welcome to Siwan Lovett and to Frank Fitzgerald Ryan, who will be our entertaining and guest speakers for today. My name is Karen Alexander and I'm from the Victoria Naturally Alliance. The Alliance is 9 environment groups, there they are, spread around the room here, led by the Victorian National Parks Association. The NPA is the community group, it's not Parks Victoria. It does often get phone calls asking where they could go, whether roads are open, whether they can go camping, but it isn't Parks Victoria. In fact, I think you can thank the NPA and many of these groups for many of the parks that we do have. So the Alliance came together to address the biodiversity crisis in this state, which of course is being exacerbated by the climate change crisis, and to look for the solutions and to engage with people to work towards those solutions. I can't say that we've actually managed to solve all the problems yet, along with you, but we certainly feel there's some very exciting things happening out there in terms of landscape scale projects that are addressing those issues and which all people can be involved with. Look, just a little bit of housekeeping so it doesn't get we don't have to interrupt a bit later on. Can I ask how many of you here today came because of the notice they saw in our monthly e-bulletin? Could you just put your hand up? And how many people came today because of what was in the Sustainable Living Festival program? Good, thank you. Any other brilliant sources of information that you got this from?
The Victorian Climate Action Calendar.
Climate Action Calendar, thank you. Any others out there? Friends, of course, yes. All right, thank you, that's great. And I'd like to also, because I don't want to forget it, to have a big thank you to Tim von Karate, who did 99.9% of the organising for this with other teams of people and support from various. So Tim, I'm not sure where you've gone to, but thank you. Here he is down here looking embarrassed. Thank you very much for that. Indeed. All right. An acknowledgement to the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong, and to elders past and present. And I must say I find it rather wonderful that we are continuing to meet in this part of Melbourne, because just across on the other side of the river, we used to cross it via the rock waterfall area that was exposed at low tide, it was a way of getting back and forth across the river, was a key meeting place for traditional peoples in which they would have got together to celebrate, and no doubt to discuss issues which I'm sure for them would have been as serious as climate change and biodiversity crisis is to us, especially once we arrived on the scene, and also to tell stories, lots of stories. What a tradition of storytelling that we can feel a little bit a part of and connected to as it's part of our background as well. So that's a really wonderful thing that we're continuing to do here. I must say the environment movement that I've been part of for far too long has not been terribly good at telling stories. I can remember walking into the Wilderness Society office probably 10 or 15 years ago, and a young man, Richard, was there, and he'd been there a week, and he was asked to do a chronology of the forest campaign in East Gippsland. There was no one in that office that could go back more than 2 years. And that campaign had been going, in my memory, from 1976, and I'm sure that therefore it would have been going longer than that. So even within our own movement, we're not good at telling the stories. And we're very information biased. I have to tell you that 44% of native plants and 30% of animals in this state are threatened species. I find it really difficult not to tell you that piece of information. But that on its own does not connect us to those species. And I had a little example here again years ago. Bob Brown, long before he became the Bob Brown, the leader of the Greens, told me that he'd been out for a really early morning walk, just crossing Swanston Street, looked down, and there was a platypus. Now, that river changed the second I heard that story, because for a long time the Yarra River in my childhood had been drain number 26. It had been derided as an upside down river, etc, etc. That sighting and that story of that platypus immediately made it this living thing, this place, this thing that I could actually connect to. So without that connection to nature and the sign, why are we going to care, and how are we going to best be connected? Well, story is a really good way of doing it. And we've got powerful stories in this country. We've got 60,000 years of them. We've got our stories more recently of fire and flood and so on. But we need the stories of every day that actually also connect us into the species. I think we're quite good at connecting to the landscape, really, but I don't think we're so good at connecting into the species that are around. Who knows when the orange-bellied parrot arrives back in Melbourne after an incredible flight across Bass Strait. There are all those types of stories around that some people will be aware of and know, but not necessarily, we're not necessarily communicating them. So we're extremely fortunate today to have Siwan Lovett and Frank Fitzgerald-Ryan with us. And Siwan has had a long history now in helping us understand through story, and especially the biophysical scientists and so on, helping us understand that information, and also helping those people out there on the land translate their information into information that the more technical people can understand. She had a Churchill scholarship a while ago to go and investigate how it is that river restoration centres work overseas, and then came back to Australia and set up the Australian River Restoration Centre. And she's been particularly interested in rivers and how we relate to rivers over the last 11 years. So for some extraordinary reason, she seems to think that laughter and telling of good stories and good conversation is a rather wonderful thing to be doing. So Frank, many of you will know Frank. He's a bit of a wonderful treasure in the Melbourne scene with Vox Bandicoot. He's been going, well, we should say for a very long time, with a whole lot of extraordinary creative ways of helping us get a sense of who we are and how we relate to this land and to these species, whether it's Sustainability Street or a variety of other extraordinary things that Vox Bandicoot have done over a long time now. So he is going to help us place us in the local scene. So please give a really warm welcome to Siwan and to Frank.